Forgotten history, short-lived oil booms, and junior historians. Those are just some of the topics we're exploring on Warren County Preserves. Join us. Welcome to Warren County Preserves. I'm Amy Bingham. From Riverview to the boat landing, from the remains of a dairy factory to an Irish Catholic settlement, the area known as Delafield holds a tremendous amount of history, much of it forgotten. But there's an interesting partnership that is bringing that history back to life in an exciting way.
This has been a collaborative effort between the Bowling Green Historic Preservation Board, the Landmark Association, Riverview at Hobson Grove, the Greenways Commission, to really celebrate and explore the history of this particular area of Bowling Green. And one of the things that we have done as a part of this project is to have students at Warren Central High School to take on researching topics for inclusion potentially on signage throughout the Greenbelt, so that patrons of that particular facility can learn something about the area that they are enjoying and know a little bit about our past.
There are a couple of reasons that we're interested in the Delafield area, and one is the history. So much of what happened early in Bowling Green happened in that area, and it's an opportunity to sort of bring that back to people's attention. Number two is the proximity to downtown and to other areas where we're working, which include other stretches of the Barren River and also the Jennings Creek. So it just makes a logical arc. And what we're trying to do with the Greenways project is to build some trails that link those points, and then people who are on those trails will have the opportunity to stop and learn a little bit about what kinds of activities took place at those locations.
But we're very excited at Riverview about this project because we feel that this is a natural thing to come through Hobson Grove Park, for people to be able to walk and hike and cycle through this area and to be able to learn more about the history of this community. And I think that this phase of the Greenbelt will really be a benchmark for other areas of Warren County to strive to emulate.
Certainly, the experts have been hard at work researching the many different stories about this area, but it is the young person's perspective that makes this project unique.
It has been very exciting to see the students suddenly realize the importance of some of these bits of history that perhaps have been forgotten for some time now, and to see them take an interest in learning more about it, to have a desire to meet the people who are still living that could be interviewed about learning a little bit of that history. They have enhanced their research skills to find court records, deed records, and all sorts of things, as well as using the Kentucky Museum's facilities.
Well, we went to the library at Western, and we researched a bunch of documents, historical documents and books and stuff about this. We also asked for help, like, whenever we didn't find what we were looking for. I think after a while, like, you find whatever you're looking for, like with extensive research, it'll just come.
It kind of starts out in a big pile, and then I narrow it down by just reading, looking, seeing pictures that really interest me, things that pop out.
We go to the Kentucky Library often, and then we try and go and visit the places that we're researching. Jonathan Jeffries helps us a lot whenever he's there at the library. He knows a lot about Bowling Green.
It always excites me when I see young people, and I see college students all the time, but to see students even younger than that getting involved in history projects. And Mr. Jenkins has done an admirable job of trying to get those students to use local resources and to not just be studying the Civil War or events that happen on a national scale, but what happened here. Because all history is local when you really think about it. And so he's gotten them involved in looking at industry in the area, things that revolve around social change and mechanical change and industrial change in our country. And so I've had fun talking with the students, and I think a little light goes on when they are able to see that, hey, we do have something unique to our area, or that it's not unique, but they see how it fits in to a whole movement that happened all across our country.
When we return, the students and the experts will share their research with us here on Warren County Preserves. Welcome back to Warren County Preserves. The area known as Delafield has a rich and diverse history.
That area, as I have heard, was at one time a hub of activity. It was the gateway into Bowling Green when most of the goods and people, especially the goods, came up the Barren River from the Green and the Mississippi. And that large traffic was something that people watched for from the high points all along the river, and sort of passed the announcement along, you know, that something was coming in, either to the city wharf or to the boat landing area.
The Delafield area was really a sort of suburb of Bowling Green, and at one time there were a number of very substantial Victorian homes in that area where people who wanted a more country type home outside of the city, they could have their home there and feel comfortable in a more rural setting. Gradually that began to change as more industry went into that area.
Well, we have Riverview, and certainly we could be considered a centerpiece of this effort, but we have nearby Kinloch, a wonderful 1820s historic home which is private, but it is adjacent to the old Bowling Green Wharf site, the pet milk plant, the asphalt and stone business there. We have also branched out into other aspects of this, such as African Americans who have lived in this section of town, and how the community has evolved over time, not just any particular time period, but throughout the entire existence of organized government in this particular area.
One topic that caught the interest of student Megan Goodbar was the Delafield School.
It used to be just an all-black school, and from what I know now about it, and that actually people that I know from my parents' past actually went to that school. They used to transport people from Scottsville to Delafield community so that they could go to school, and because they had an all-white school in Allen County. For some students, they started out with kind of poor education, and then they got to Delafield, and it made a difference. Put jobs over there in an all African-American community.
Education for the community also came in the form of spiritual guidance.
The Presbyterian Church felt like our community could afford another congregation for their denomination, and they established a mission down in the Delafield area. It was also an area of town that, by the time the mission is established, is sort of a rowdy part of town. It's down on the boat landing. There are some bars in that area, and they felt like this would be an area where they could really establish an evangelical presence down amongst that group of people. So they build a really attractive stone church in that area, made out of the native limestone from our area. The Presbyterian Mission is a very picturesque church, and at the time that it was built, this was sort of a movement. You know, this is a time when you see a lot of picturesque cottages and things like that in trade books and architecture books of the time period. And they were never intended for this to be a large building. And so it fits in with the style of the period. It does have some really nice features like the diamond-shaped panes in the window, and the feel too of the stone itself in a way fits in with the arts and crafts movement of the time period also, you know, trying to include more natural materials, and, you know, shingles and stone and masonry. And then these diamond-shaped windows even gave it more of a picturesque effect. the little bell tower at the top just added more to that.
For student Daniel Hood, it was the oil industry that sparked his interest despite the challenges of his research topic.
In particular, it involves me looking at maps, like how many oil wells were around the area. I had to look at personal accounts of what exactly happened at the place. And I also had to go through some old newspaper clippings and find articles about how many oil wells might have been there, or like how many gallons they pumped. And also I've been trying to find a few diary entries here and there and see if anybody remarked about it. Currently, the most hardest part is trying to find specific documents between a certain time period, because at the moment there are no documents I could find about the oil wells around Riverview between the Kentucky oil boom in the 1920s and the 80s. So it's kind of hard trying to find documents during that whole time period. In my research, I noticed that back in the late 1800s that Colonel Hobson actually discovered the first deep oil well down around his house, which is the Riverview Museum at the moment.
The oil industry is a curiosity for Bowling Green. A lot of people don't realize that we do have oil deposits here. We still have oil deposits here, and there still is exploration for petroleum in our area. The problem with the oil here is it's in shallow wells. So you don't have these deep wells that you might find in Texas or somewhere like that. So once they start pumping, many times it goes dry rather quickly. Although we have some wells that were drilled here in the 1920s that are still pumping even today. The oil, it took them a while to develop the pipelines in our area because the geologists knew that we had shallow wells and they didn't feel like there'd be enough here to warrant actually building pipelines. But eventually that was done in the 20s, and the pipelines also fed into a couple of refineries that we had here in Bowling Green, which again, people don't realize that we had refineries here. We actually had several different brands of gasoline that were made in this area. Probably the most famous one was Kentucky Made, kind of a play on words there, M-A-I-D, but it was also Kentucky Made right here in Bowling Green.
It's interesting like how much oil wells are around this area, because usually people think that a lot of the oil around here in the United States is around Texas or in Alaska, but people must realize that Kentucky is also an oil-producing state. As a matter of fact, it's probably the sixth on the list of the most oil-producing in the whole country.
Students Julia Gregorian and Jamie Booth chose to focus on another one of the many industries that were a successful part of the Delafield community, pet milk.
We just learned about how, like, when it opened, that it only started with like a certain amount of money, which was very low today, and it just grew into this big thing.
It brought a lot of business to Bowling Green, and it made us one of like the biggest dairy producers in Kentucky, and they produce over 100,000 pounds of evaporated milk a day. And actually for a while, in 1945, it was the second largest industry besides tobacco.
We've always had a strong dairy heritage in our area, and so we're broadening outside of just Warren County, but all of those counties surrounding us, dairy has always been a strong product. And so there was Pet Milk, which is located in St. Louis. It was always looking for new areas in which to be able to collect dairy products. And so they realized that we had this strong tradition in this area, and they moved here in 1925. They realized that the plant could be easily located on the railroad spur, which was the old Portage Railroad that went down to the river. And they could take it right to the main line, and they could ship these products all over the country from Bowling Green. They had collecting points all around the county, and in a few of the surrounding counties, they were called drop-off stations, or some people call them cream stations, where farmers could bring the cream. Sometimes they actually took trucks out and picked the cream up at different locations, but most of the time they were picking up large amounts in one station, bringing it back to the plant and making all types of dairy products, particularly condensed milk, which again, it was safe. It could be sent out all over the country from that plant.
I didn't know it was such a big industry. Like, I'd never really heard about it before, and I didn't know that big building over there was that. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting.
This area's rich history serves as an inspiration today.
This area continues to be, and has been throughout its history, an extremely multicultural area. So much of the Church Street area was settled by Irish Catholics who came here with the building of the L&N Railroad, and they were essentially abandoned here. And later on, that neighborhood continued to thrive as a working class neighborhood. It then evolved into primarily an African American neighborhood. In the last 15 years or so, we have seen the neighborhood evolve again into very much the Hispanic community. Throughout the history of Bowling Green, this particular neighborhood has been able to embrace the people who had chosen to make this their home. No matter who they were or what socioeconomic class they might be a part of, or their educational background and so forth, the community has remained the same, and the people have come and gone for most of those times, but this is still a great neighborhood, and this community has indeed provided so many wonderful, successful people as examples who have called this area of Bowling Green home.
Everything that we've been researching, it's always been like one person's idea, or, you know, somebody who wanted to do something, and even though their resources were limited, they still were able to accomplish their goals without much trouble because they had so much will to do it.
The students themselves are an inspiration. We hope that someday you enjoy the thrill of watching a story unfold as you research a topic of interest. Join us here next time for a look at our history here on Warren County Preserves.
Well, all I want to say is that I thank the Kentucky Junior Historical Society for allowing me to research this topic and learning more about local history, and I hope the viewers who will see this will find it interesting to watch.